Taconic Resources for Independence, in partnership with Home of FDR National Historic Site, hosted its Spring Inclusion Festival to raise public awareness about the culture of disability, promote community inclusion for individuals with disabilities in Dutchess County, and challenge stigma and discrimination. TRI's Inclusion Festival commemorates the 1990 signing of the Americans with Disabilities Act, a sweeping civil rights law which prohibits discrimination against people with disabilities in everyday activities.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention the upcoming 33rd anniversary of the passing of the Americans with Disabilities Act, which was signed into law on July 26, 1990. As a sweeping civil rights law, the ADA prohibits discrimination against people with disabilities in everyday activities. Titles 1 and 3 of the ADA in particular mandate that all places of public accommodation, such as retail stores, restaurants, healthcare providers, train stations, to name a few, be accessible and inclusive to individuals with disabilities. Access barriers such as steps, narrow doorways, blocked pedestrian walkways, and the lack of appropriate accommodations such as ASL interpreters for the deaf prohibit people with disabilities from accessing their communities and prevent their full inclusion. To be clear, it is an act of discrimination if a place of public accommodation is inaccessible to a person with a disability. If that person is unable to enter a retail establishment to purchase a piece of clothing, unable to access a restaurant to enjoy a meal with friends, or be denied access to a public restroom. Unfortunately, there are still numerous businesses and public facilities that are not in compliance with the ADA, which deny persons with disabilities their civil rights to full and equal enjoyment of services and commodities in the same manner as everyone else. Oftentimes we hear that buildings are grandfathered in, or that carrying an individual in a wheelchair is an acceptable means of providing access, or that renovations are too expensive, or that a building was not cited for a Title III violation, so it must be okay. It's not okay. These are myths and mistaken beliefs that block people with disabilities from accessing all that their communities have to offer and prevent their full inclusion. Of course, the building stock in most of communities across Dutchess County are comprised of older, historic structures with steps, narrow doorways, and inaccessible interiors. Sidewalk infrastructure in many of these communities may include setback limitations that pose complex challenges to mitigating access barriers to local businesses and establishments. Well, the Village of Tivoli can check all those boxes, but instead of invoking grandfathered in, Mayor of Tivoli, Joel Griffith, leads with how can we make our village more welcoming and inclusive to everyone, including persons with disabilities. It is my great pleasure to introduce Mayor of Tivoli, Joel Griffith. Welcome, Mayor. How would you first define inclusivity? What does it mean to you? And how are you working to implement that vision toward inclusivity in the Village of Tivoli?
Sure. So, I mean, firstly, as the chief elected executive officer, I think the answer to that is very straightforward. Everyone, all citizens of our little polity are entitled to, both legally and morally, in my opinion, equal access to all the resources and services that is the responsibility of the Village of Tivoli to provide. It's very, very easy. And on a personal level, we have to recognize our common humanity. Everyone has value. You just never know who your next best friend is going to be that you haven't met yet. And, you know, we're living in a time when our differences are, boy, they're fanning the flames of that stuff. And I'm just not going to let go of the fact that we all are, it's a human family, and everyone deserves to be included. And, you know, if we probe the architecture of the golden rule, I know that one of its planks is inclusivity. Come on, we're gonna like not include people. We're gonna ostracize them. Like these get this. It just doesn't strike me as correct. So, and then in the village, some of the projects that we've done in the last decade that I've been involved, we've been able, and again, Tivoli's pretty small, so we've done about 3,000 feet of new sidewalk, which, you know, again, you mentioned historic. Some were blue stone, but they were 3 feet wide, and they're, the grass is coming up, and the tree, everyone likes their street trees, but they push the sidewalk. So we've been able to do almost 3,000 feet of new sidewalk, and it's 5 feet wide, and we've got curb cuts, and we've got the truncated dome mats for the visually impaired, and we've done several new crosswalks. So we're really trying to make it a place where everyone can get around easily and enjoy all corners of the vast metropolis that is the Village of Tivoli. We put a ramp on our firehouse a couple of years ago that wasn't there before. Before, if someone was going to access that building, we had to open the big bay door and they had to scooch along between the fire trucks. So now they have their own other way in. And we recently redid our bus stop. So Dutchess County Loop Bus, one of its termini is the Village of Tivoli. So we put a nice bus stop in right next to our park, our recreational park. And we got a big grant to make some upgrades to that park. We upgraded the bathrooms, they're ADA accessible. We put in a new blue parking spot right by the pavilion. And we also have a wheelchair swing in our park. So, it has been getting more use as people learn that it's there. But, someone could drive up to our park and access the swing with a young person, or they could even get on the county loop bus and come all the way up and use the swing. And so these are all little things, but like Tivoli's a small canvas, so if you make 2 brush strokes, it feels like a big thing. That's our advantage. Our disadvantage is we're tiny and we have a small tax base, and there's not a lot of money to achieve these things. But I'm just so grateful that you reached out to me. Was that about a year ago? It doesn't feel that long, but that here we are, and I'm so grateful and honored to be your guest because you're helping me so much do what ought to be done. I'm really grateful to you both and your organization. Senator Michelle Hinchy was in Tivoli just yesterday, giving us one of those giant, wonderful novelty checks, for $100,000 to another project we have going on in the village, which should be of interest to everyone. We are trying to expand our firehouse. We have a woefully undersized steel box from 1985, and we are very blessed that we have over 60 volunteers in our little Tivoli, 60 volunteers in our fire and rescue squad, which is rather unheard of. A lot of these places are dwindling as their members age, etc. So we have to give these people who are going to do this for free the facilities they need, and that's to keep all the rest of us safe. So we're really excited about that. It's just one of the other things that we're working on. So look for the expanded, beautiful firehouse. Hopefully in 2024, we're looking to break ground.
That's great news. One of the things that we've been doing, when I say we, Lisa and I, and the committee to advance advocacy, is we have been exercising. Mike Kelman here is very familiar with this. He's our ADA attorney. Freedom of information law allows us to FOIL for records from any municipality. It allows all of us to do that. And it's something that we should take advantage of because it's our right. So we know that a lot of the grant money comes from the county, and that the county awards applications for grants that assert they're going to include accessibility improvements, that they're going to work harder with these. If you give me these grant dollars, my village, my town, my city, we're going to make it more accessible. You get more points for that when you apply for some of these grants with the county. So we FOILed and received copies of some of the grant applications that had been awarded funding, and we got a sense that these applicants haven't been as sincere as they suggested they were about ADA accessibility, using the grants for ADA accessibility improvements. And even before we met Joel, his applications, they were different. He really was looking to improve accessibility. He just mentioned, the mayor, that they've laid 3,000 feet of sidewalk. Yeah, that's very expensive. A tax base of about 1,100. He's doing that with grant money. And when you lay new cement for sidewalks, they're going to be ADA accessible. So I want, I keep saying Joel, but Miss Mayor, Mayor Griffith, okay, to talk a little bit about the work that he really has done in his municipality, mining these grants, of which, I'm going to let him talk about it.
Thank you, John. So yes, I was crowing about all that footage, linear footage. I think sidewalk right now is about $110 per foot. So I would say 80 to 90% of all the projects that we've done to promote inclusivity have been funded by a program called the Community Development Block Grant, so the CDBG. That's federal money that's distributed to counties, and then the counties distribute it to the municipalities. And so we've done, I think, 4 CDBGs for sidewalk. Our bus stop was a CDBG. Our park improvement with the swing was a CDBG. And those are nice grants for a community our size, because they'll usually award you between $50,000 and $150,000, which allow us to do 500 feet this year, 500 feet next year. So it's really that county program. And I will say, I know this is a topic in the Department of County Planning. I think another reason Tivoli's been successful, hopefully because our projects are good and we mean what we say, but also we spend the money. We get the grant, we do the project, we spend all the money, and we come back next year and say, give us some more. Because there are reasons, sometimes that's not so easy to do in other communities, but these funding agencies and the people at the county who are holding the money, they don't want to give out that grant and then it sits on a shelf for 3-4 years, even if you've got some real bureaucratic reasons it's not happening. So I think Tivoli's been pretty committed to, we're going to spend your money, so it keeps coming. And I'm very grateful to Dutchess County for helping us, because all these things we couldn't achieve just on our tax base. It's too small. We have snow to plow and people to pay and the basic stuff. So yeah, networking with the businesses, right? There's Title II and Title III, what the government's responsible for and what the public sector or private sector is responsible for. And so we have a little business organization, and you were nice enough to come back for a second meeting, and we sat with them. And Tivoli prides ourselves on our historic architecture. It's something we're known for. But as you said, steep steps, narrow sidewalks, narrow doors. So, but I think that there's a way to not deface our architecture and figure out how to also, maybe that ramp goes on the side or the back and not on the front, or maybe you can fit a lift, and even while you're trying to find the money for that, because we do hear that it's hard enough to run a small business, and then you also have to come up with tens of thousands of dollars for this or that accommodation, which while you're working on that, does your website say anything about accessibility for all patrons? Does your website say, have your menu? Can you call in? Do you have someone who's going to carry the food out to the curb? And these are little things that people can do in the meantime while they're working on the big things. I mean, there's really, in Tivoli, less is more, small is beautiful, and the littlest thing can make a big difference in somebody's day and should not be left undone. We've got our statement on our website, and we've got the link to the ADA rules for small towns, but I would very much, another thing I would like to achieve in the coming year would be to add that capacity to serve different folks with sensory issues and how they use the website. Again, for the little village, that's a cost lift. I've gotten some quotes, but we're going to figure out how to do it because it should be there. Thanks to you, I think that we have a good start. And this is just the beginning of trying to continue to make, one person coming to Tivoli, I don't want them to have any kind of obstacle, but we all need to help each other figure out what those obstacles are. And especially, those of us in elected office, we've got a million things coming at us every day that we want to handle, and we don't want this host of issues to be, overlooked.